This knowledge was hidden for over 70 years, locked away in the basement archives of the Theosophical Society in London, gathering dust and secrets. Few people know this, but Helena Blavatsky left behind more than just her famous books. She left warnings about something that walks among us, wearing human faces but carrying empty souls. The manuscript was discovered in 1952, wrapped in silk and sealed with wax. Written in her own hand, it contained 9 signs. 9 unmistakable markers of beings who appear human, but lack the divine spark that makes us truly alive. The society's leaders were terrified. They buried it deeper than any secret they'd ever kept, but some truths refused to stay buried. Tonight, you're going to learn what Helena Blavatsky knew about the soulless ones, and why she believed they might already be in your family. Helena Petrovna Blavatsky wasn't like other people. Born in 1831 in Ukraine, she could see things others couldn't. As a child, she would sit for hours in silence, watching invisible beings move through her room like shadows made of light. "I see them everywhere," she wrote in her private journal. "Beings of light and beings of void. The masters tell me that not all who wear human form carry the divine flame within. Some are empty vessels, walking among us, feeding off our spiritual energy." By the age of 20, Helena had traveled to Tibet, where the ascended masters taught her the ancient secrets. They showed her the 7 planes of existence, the evolution of human consciousness, and something else, something darker. They revealed that throughout history there have always been those who look human but possess no soul. "Master Moria explained it to me," she later wrote. "The soul is not automatically given to every human form. It must be earned, cultivated, awakened. Some beings are born as empty shells, imitating life but never truly living it." Helena spent decades studying these soulless ones. She documented their behaviors, their patterns, their influence on those around them. She discovered that they could be found in every family, every community, every generation, and she learned how to recognize them. But before we continue this journey into forbidden knowledge, I need to ask you something personal. Where in this vast world are you listening to me right now? What city, what country has brought you to this moment? Please share that with me in the comments, because according to Helena Blavatsky's teachings, the fact that you're here learning this ancient wisdom is no accident. Your soul called you here for a reason. In 1875, Helena Blavatsky had a vision that changed everything. She was meditating in her study in New York when Master Kuthumi appeared to her in astral form. His presence filled the room with golden light, but his message was darker than any she'd received before. "Observe," he told her, and suddenly she could see into the souls of people walking on the street below. Most glowed with inner light, some bright, some dim, but all carrying the divine spark. But others were completely dark, empty, void. "These are the ones without souls," Master Kuthumi explained. "They are not fallen angels, not demons in disguise. They are empty vessels that learn to mimic human behavior. They feel nothing, connect to nothing, create nothing. They exist only to consume the life force of others." Helena watched in horror as these soulless beings moved through crowds, leaving trails of confusion and exhaustion behind them. People who encountered them would suddenly feel drained, disoriented, somehow less than they were before. "But how do we recognize them?" Helena asked. The master smiled sadly. "Through the 9 signs, Helena. 9 unmistakable markers that reveal the absence of soul. You must document these for humanity. The age of awakening is coming, and people must learn to protect themselves." That night, Helena began writing. She filled page after page with observations, interviews, and spiritual insights. She discovered that the soulless ones had always existed, mentioned in ancient texts under different names. The empty ones, the mimics, the soul thieves. What she discovered next would shake her to her core. Helena's investigation took an unexpected turn when she met Dr. Alexander Mitchell, a psychiatrist studying unusual personality disorders. He had been documenting cases of patients who seemed to lack basic human empathy and emotional connection. "I've never seen anything like it," Dr. Mitchell confided to Helena during one of their secret meetings. "These individuals can mimic emotions perfectly, but when you look deeper, there's nothing there. No genuine feeling, no moral compass, no capacity for genuine love or remorse." Helena knew immediately that he was describing the soulless ones the masters had shown her. But through her connection to the Ascended Masters, she received a revelation that modern psychology couldn't provide. The absence of soul wasn't just a psychological condition, it was a spiritual reality. In her trance states, Helena learned that human consciousness exists on 7 different planes. Most people operate primarily on the physical, emotional, and mental planes, but the soul exists on the higher planes, the Buddhic and Atmic levels where divine consciousness resides. The soulless ones, she wrote, exist only on the lower 3 planes. They have physical bodies, they can mimic emotions, and they possess a kind of intelligence, but they have no connection to the higher planes where wisdom, compassion, and divine love reside. This explained their behavior. Without access to the higher planes of consciousness, they couldn't experience genuine empathy, spiritual growth, or moral development. They were like sophisticated biological machines, programmed to survive and manipulate, but incapable of true human experience. Helena began documenting the 9 signs that could help people recognize these empty beings. But as she delved deeper into her research, she realized something terrifying. These soulless ones were not random anomalies. They seemed to be increasing in number, and they were drawn to positions of power and influence. The Masters had warned her that humanity was entering a critical phase of spiritual evolution, and the soulless ones were the greatest threat to that evolution. Through years of observation and guidance from the Ascended Masters, Helena Blavatsky identified 9 unmistakable signs of the soulless. Each sign revealed a different aspect of their spiritual emptiness. The first sign was emotional vacancy. Watch their eyes when others laugh or cry, Helena wrote. They may mirror the expression, but there's no genuine feeling behind it. Their emotional responses are learned behaviors, not authentic experiences. The second sign was the absence of true empathy. Soulless beings could not feel the pain or joy of others. They might offer sympathy if it served their purposes, but they felt nothing when witnessing suffering or celebration. The third sign was their inability to engage in genuine self-reflection. They avoid looking inward, Helena noted, because there is nothing to see. When confronted about their behavior, they deflect, lie, or attack. They cannot grow from their mistakes because they do not truly learn from experience. The fourth sign was chronic manipulation and deception, not lying out of fear or self-protection, but lying as a default mode of communication. They seemed incapable of authentic interaction. The fifth sign was their parasitic relationships. They maintained connections only as long as others served their needs. Love, loyalty, and genuine intimacy were foreign concepts to them. The sixth sign was their discomfort with silence and stillness. Meditation and quiet contemplation terrify them, Helena observed, because stillness reflects their inner void. They must constantly create noise, drama, or distraction to avoid confronting their emptiness. The seventh sign was spiritual mimicry. They used spiritual and moral language, but their energy felt cold and hollow. They could quote sacred texts and speak of love, but their presence drained rather than uplifted others. The eighth sign was their chameleon-like nature. They constantly changed their personas and beliefs to manipulate situations. They had no consistent core self because they had no soul to provide that consistency. The ninth and most disturbing sign was what Helena called the dead eyes. When truly seen, their eyes revealed absence rather than presence. There was no light, no depth, no recognition of the sacred. But recognizing these signs was only the beginning. Helena was about to discover why these beings existed at all. In 1888, while channeling information for the secret doctrine, Helena received a shocking revelation about the origin of the soulless ones. Master Moria showed her visions of ancient Atlantis, the advanced civilization that existed thousands of years ago. In Atlantis, Master Moria revealed, humanity reached great technological and psychic heights. But in their pursuit of power, some Atlanteans began experimenting with the creation of artificial humans. They succeeded in creating beings that looked human, but lacked souls. Helena saw these artificial beings in her visions, perfect physical specimens, with advanced intellectual capabilities, but completely empty of divine essence. They were created to be servants and workers, but they eventually learned to mimic their creators so perfectly that they became indistinguishable from real humans. When Atlantis fell, the master continued, these soulless beings survived. They have been reproducing and evolving for millennia, learning to blend in with true humans. They are the hollow ones, the mimics, the empty vessels that walk among you today. This revelation explains so much. The soulless ones weren't a modern phenomenon or a psychological disorder. They were the descendants of artificial beings created in humanity's distant past. They had no choice in their nature. They were literally born without souls. But Helena learned something even more disturbing. These beings were not content to simply exist alongside humanity. They were instinctively drawn to drain the life force and spiritual energy of those who possessed souls. It wasn't conscious evil. It was their nature, like a plant turning toward sunlight. They cannot create spiritual energy, Helena wrote in her secret journal, so they must steal it from others. They are unconscious vampires, feeding off the divine spark they can never possess. Helena began to understand why the masters had chosen her to document this knowledge. Humanity was entering a new phase of spiritual evolution, and people needed to know how to protect themselves from these energy predators. But the most shocking discovery was yet to come. As Helena's research became known within certain esoteric circles, she began receiving letters from people all over the world. Desperate letters from those who had recognized the signs in their own families. One letter from a woman in Boston particularly haunted Helena. Mrs. Blavatsky, I believe my own husband is one of these soulless beings. For 20 years I thought he was simply difficult or emotionally distant, but after reading your work I see all 9 signs. He has drained my life force until I barely recognize myself. What do I do? How do I protect our children? Helena realized that many people were living with soulless family members without understanding what they were dealing with. The emotional manipulation, the energy drain, the constant confusion. These weren't character flaws or mental illnesses. They were signs of fundamental spiritual absence. Through her connection with the masters, Helena developed protection techniques. She taught people how to shield their energy, how to set spiritual boundaries, and how to recognize when they were being drained. You cannot save them or heal them, she wrote in response to hundreds of similar letters. They are not broken souls. They are absent souls. Your compassion and love will not fill their emptiness. It will only deplete your own spiritual reserves. This was the hardest truth for people to accept. The natural human response to emptiness is to try to fill it with love. But Helena learned that soulless beings could not be filled. They were like spiritual black holes, consuming everything around them without ever being satisfied. The crisis deepened when Helena realized that many spiritual teachers and healers were particularly vulnerable to these beings. Their open hearts and healing energy made them attractive targets for spiritual parasites. She began warning her students, test everyone who comes to you. Look for the signs, protect your energy. Not everyone who seeks spiritual knowledge does so for noble purposes. Some seek only to find new sources of energy to consume. But Helena's warnings created a terrible dilemma. How do you protect yourself without becoming paranoid or judgmental? In 1890, Helena received her most urgent communication from the Ascended Masters. The message came through Master Jwal Khul during a deep trance state that lasted 3 days. When she emerged, she was pale and shaken. The Watchers have spoken, she told her closest students. The soulless ones are multiplying at an unprecedented rate. Something is causing more empty vessels to be born into human families. The spiritual evolution of humanity itself is at stake. Master Jwal Khul had shown her visions of the future, a world where the soulless outnumbered the souled, where genuine human connection became impossible, where love itself became extinct. It was a nightmare scenario that the Ascended Masters were desperately trying to prevent. The root cause, she learned, was humanity's growing disconnection from the divine. As people became more materialistic and spiritually disconnected, they were becoming more vulnerable to producing offspring without souls. It was as if the divine spark was gradually withdrawing from the human race. Parents who live without spiritual connection, who value only material success and physical pleasure, may give birth to empty vessels, Helena wrote in her most secret writings. The soul does not automatically incarnate in every human form. It must be called, welcomed, and nurtured. This explained why the soulless ones seem to be increasing in number, especially in modern industrial societies. As humanity moved away From spiritual practices and divine connection, they were inadvertently creating the conditions for more empty beings to be born. Helena began developing practices for expectant parents, meditations, prayers, and spiritual exercises designed to invite and nurture the incarnation of a soul in their unborn child. She taught that consciousness and intention during conception and pregnancy could determine whether a soul would inhabit the forming body. But she also received a darker warning. The soulless ones were not passive parasites. Some had learned to actively seek out and corrupt spiritual communities. They were infiltrating mystery schools, religious organizations, and healing circles, spreading confusion and discord from within. Beware the spiritual teacher who drains rather than uplifts, Helena warned. Beware the healer who leaves you feeling empty. Beware the leader who speaks of love but spreads division. The final phase of her mission was about to begin. On April 15, 1891, just weeks before her physical death, Helena Blavatsky received her final and most profound revelation about the soulless ones. Master Moria appeared to her in a vision more vivid than any she had ever experienced. "Helena," the master said, his presence filling her entire being with light, "the time has come for you to understand the ultimate purpose behind the existence of the soulless ones." What she learned in that moment shattered everything she thought she knew about good and evil, about the nature of spiritual evolution itself. They are not humanity's enemies, Master Moria revealed. They are humanity's test. Every souled being must learn to discern between the real and the artificial, between genuine love and manipulation, between spiritual truth and spiritual mimicry. The soulless ones force humanity to develop spiritual discrimination. Helena saw it all with perfect clarity. The existence of beings who could perfectly mimic human behavior but lack human essence was designed to push genuine humans toward greater spiritual awareness. Those who could not discern the difference would be drained and weakened. Those who learned to recognize and protect themselves would become spiritually stronger. In the coming age, the Master continued, humanity will face its greatest test. As the planet's vibrational frequency rises, the division between the souled and the soulless will become more apparent. Those with souls will evolve rapidly toward higher consciousness. Those without souls will become increasingly desperate and destructive. Helena understood. The new age that was approaching would not be a time of universal peace and love. It would be a time of sorting, of separation, of choosing. People would have to decide whether to develop their spiritual discernment or remain vulnerable to manipulation and energy drain. Your work, Master Moria concluded, is to prepare humanity for this choice. Those who learn to recognize the 9 signs will protect not only themselves, but the entire species. Those who ignore your warnings will become food for the empty ones. In her final weeks, Helena worked feverishly to complete her secret manuscript on the soulless beings. She knew that this knowledge would be too dangerous to publish immediately, but she also knew that eventually humanity would need it to survive. The test was coming, the choice was approaching, and the future of human consciousness hung in the balance. Helena Blavatsky died on May 8, 1891, but her spirit never left this plane. Those who are sensitive to such things know that she continues to watch, to guide, to warn from beyond the veil. Her work with the soulless ones was too important to abandon with death. If you have stayed with me through this entire journey, if you have felt the truth resonating in your heart, then your soul is already awakening to this ancient knowledge. You are being called to become one of the protectors, one of the discerning ones who can recognize emptiness masquerading as humanity. Look around you now with new eyes. Watch for the 9 signs Helena documented. Notice who drains your energy and who uplifts it. Pay attention to those who speak of love but leave you feeling empty, who claim wisdom but spread confusion, who appear spiritual but lack genuine warmth. This is not about judgment or condemnation. The soulless ones are not evil. They are empty. They cannot help their nature any more than a stone can help being cold. But you can help your nature. You can choose to strengthen your soul, to protect your energy, to surround yourself with genuine light. Practice what Helena taught. Begin each day by connecting to the divine source within you. Set energetic boundaries around your spiritual essence. Trust your intuitive feelings about people, especially when something feels off despite their words or appearance. Nourish your soul through beauty, silence, prayer, and nature. Remember, The very fact that you sought out this knowledge, that you hunger for spiritual truth, proves that you carry the divine spark within you. The soulless ones do not seek enlightenment. They seek only to consume those who do. Helena Blavatsky sacrificed her reputation, her health, and ultimately her life to bring this knowledge to humanity. She endured ridicule and persecution because she knew that one day people like you would need these tools to navigate the spiritual challenges of a transforming world. The age of awakening is here. The separation between the souled and the soulless is accelerating. Those who carry the divine flame within them are being called to recognize each other, to protect each other, and to preserve the light of genuine human consciousness for future generations. You are not alone in this knowledge. Across the world, sensitive souls are awakening to these same truths. Together you form a network of light that the empty ones cannot penetrate or corrupt. Trust your soul, protect your energy, share this wisdom with those ready to receive it, and remember that Helena Blavatsky and the Ascended Masters continue to guide all those who genuinely seek the light. The future of human consciousness depends on souls like yours. Rise to meet that responsibility with courage, wisdom, and unshakable connection to the divine source that lives within you. Perhaps nothing about your discovery of this knowledge was accidental. Perhaps your soul called you here because it knew you were ready to become a guardian of the light. Welcome to the Eternal Watch. Helena Blavatsky's work continues through you.